Hello, and welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thank you very much for tuning in and joining me as I explore the wide world of pens. I've been on a roll recently. I've been finding great pens I enjoy, and hopefully you enjoy also, at least watching me share my enjoyment of the pens. So this is a pen I found on Etsy from Easy Buy, and from all I can tell, there's the only place you can buy this pen. And it is a Jinhao Tiger Pen 9056, not to be confused with the 9056 Tiger Wood Pen. And we're going to look at all those as we explore this pen. I think it represents an interesting collaboration, between Easy Buy, the seller, and Jinhao, the maker of this pen. And we talk a little bit about marketing and design and sales and all of those aspects that come into play when you're dealing with a large volume retail product, which to me, Chinese fountain pens are that. So we're going to just look a little bit more closely at this interesting pen as it rotates on the turntable in front of you. And yes, it is interesting. And yes, it has many design elements because it is based on another pen that Jinhao made. Kind of what Hongdian has been doing a lot with some of their designs. So we're going to let it turn around so you can catch a glimpse of that cap and continue on. Before we start doing some explorations, let's take a look at this pen a little bit more closely. And as we turn it around, we'll see a tiger. And it's in some type of relief. So I don't know whether this is etched in or whether this is some type of metal decal that has been put in place, but all of the design elements here are raised, so they're kind of three-dimensional. I haven't seen this type of work done before. Usually these things are recessed, but it's interesting how they did it. I'm not necessarily a fan of this kind of dull gray finish, but it does serve its purpose. It does make for a nice pen, and they put a black clip on it, which is not very common in Jinhao pens. And as we said, the cap comes off in less than 1 1/4 turns. Would have been nice to have a black nib, but it doesn't. But we see here these metal threads are dark coated. And as we unscrew the barrel, which comes off very easily, we'll also see this metal section here is dark. They have that O-ring there, which I really like. I think it's a well-made pen, as these wooden pens are from Jinhao. I think we need to take a look inside the cap and see how that plastic liner is in place. You can see how thick it is. It's pretty thick. So now we're in dark mode, and sometimes this brings out more detail because you don't have the reflections of the lights. But speaking of lights, let's bring in the LED, and it's going to actually show a little bit more of that relief and that interesting tiger and some of the accompanying design elements. If we look inside the cap, we'll see that nice thick liner. Oh, there's an exposed screw there that holds in the clip. Not a good design. I like to see that covered with a liner, even though this way you can get to it easily if you need to remove the clip or do something. There's a slight ledge in there, which hopefully seals up well. So if that screw creates an airtight situation and that screw is rust resistant, which sometimes they're not, then this should work well. Time will tell. Yeah. It's an interesting design. I have to say it hasn't grown on me yet. So the first thing we're going to do is compare it to its younger brother, which is the 9056, and they branded it Heritage pen, and I think this is tiger wood, so that's where it comes into play. The barrel of this tiger pen is a black ebony wood. What's nice is the cap comes off in 1 1/4 turns. The X159, people could learn a lot from that, and the original wood 9056 also takes even a little less than 1 1/4 turns. We'll see a different section on the wood one. This section reminds me of the one on the X159, which I think is nice. It's just a silver tone nib. You know, Jinhao's been using this nib for a long time. I think it's time for an upgrade, a change in the aesthetics. At least it does come in extra fine, fine, and medium. And the medium, I have a number of them, and they work very, very well. Just a typical plastic feet on the other side. And these pretty much, the tiger wood one actually feels slightly heavier. That section is a great size. And as you can see, as expected, the tiger pen fits well in the hand, feels nice. And the other thing that one might expect from this design is the cap does post. It weighs a ton. It certainly doesn't enhance the writing experience. The wood pen, the cap is much lighter, and therefore posting it works well. But the end of that cap doesn't have any cap band on it or anything, and wood is susceptible to cracking, so I wouldn't post that pen if I had. Here I've disassembled the tiger pen, to me, as much as you would ever need to disassemble it for cleaning, changing inks, or whatever. You know, Jinhao's been using nib collars and nib assemblies for a long time, and this is similar to all the other ones that they have. You have that Jinhao logo. You have a nice O-ring here down at the bottom. Nice threads. So I'll put silicone grease on these threads and a little bit on that O-ring when I reassemble. The nib is a standard Jinhao number 6. They've been making them for years and years and years. X450, 750, etc., etc. And your classic plastic feed. And the nibs generally always pull out very easily with the Jinhao pens. You know, what's nice about this section, as I look at it even more, is at the bottom, this is a metal ring, which a lot of times would be either gold or silver colored. Here it's colored in black. Similar is the black here on all the other metal bits like the clip. So overall, I'm somewhat happy with the design. We're going to ink it up and see how that nib writes. We expect it to write like all the other Jinhao medium nibs that I have, which is quite well wet, consistent line. The other thing that's nice about these Jinhao assemblies is there's a flat spot there in this nib collar, which matches up to the flat spot at the bottom of the feed. So when you insert the feed into this nib collar, it goes in one way. I think that's good because a lot of times you play around with getting these things to fit back together again once you pull them apart, and that could be a problem. And you can always align it so that the top of the feed lines up with that chariot if you have any questions or can't see the flat spot. This is in a completely black ebony style wood here. There is some subtle grain in it, which if you catch the right light, hopefully I'm catching it on the camera, I'll find out when I look at this, but it's very interesting. I think a solid black ebony type color like we saw on the Hongdian 660 probably would have complemented this pen a little bit better, but it's nice that it has that subtle grain to it that you got to look for. Originally, when I got the Tiger pen, I thought, it looks similar to the X159, and I thought they shared some common background, but they don't. Even though those sections are similar, the X159 is much bigger. That number 8 nib certainly looks nice. I mean, this Tiger pen would look great with a black number 8 nib in it, but I'm certain since it's based on the 9056 design, which has a number 6 nib, that wasn't something that was considered. But they did, darken the metal trim, which I think is very, very nice. But it's just interesting, obviously the X159 I think is a newer design, only pen with the number 8 nib in it. So therefore, maybe some other pen models might evolve. Who knows? We have our fingers crossed. Be nice to see something with some interesting resins in it or some interesting design elements in it. Who knows what they might end up doing. But certainly right now, from my experience, Hongdian is miles ahead of the other pen makers in being very, very creative and making great pens for us to enjoy. So what ink to put into the Tiger pen? Nothing really called out to me, but I haven't used this ink for a while. And as I labeled the other side, it's South Smoke. It's number 292 from Pen BBS, also sometimes called Tobacco. It's an interesting kind of really dark teal with a little bit of glitter in it. Not certain if it's coming out like that, but we're putting it in, and I think that medium Jinhao nib will handle this ink very well. So now for some editorial comments, some dimensions, and some closing writing. So overall, I kind of like the pen. I'm not in love with it. I find it intriguing and interesting, but the wow factor's not really there. It works well as a pen. As we saw earlier, the writing example was very nice. It feels great in the hand. And yes, you could post it, but that 20 plus gram cap just really throws off the balance substantially, and not something I would think is a pleasant writing experience. So we won't do that. It's fairly light without that cap on it. The section feels good in the hand. It'll give you the dimensions. You don't feel those threads, and their little step up doesn't bother you, so you can really hold it anywhere you want. And that's what's really nice to me with writing with a pen, where you're not restricted to holding it in one particular spot. You can move it around, which I do, especially for long writing sessions. So overall, I'm glad I have the pen. I'm glad I had any pen, but I'm glad I'd be able to share this with you. And if you do want one, there's only one place to get it. I'll put a link in the video description. After the final writing sample, if you want to stick around, I'll have a discussion about what I see as design of fountain pens in China from my view. I had some experience in that market, so not the pen market, but a similar large retail market. So stick around for that, kind of like an added addendum after we say bye. So hopefully you heard how smooth the nib is. This to me is a classic medium number 6 steel nib. It writes like it. Jinhao has been consistent in making this nib, and it's, to me, I've never had one of these medium nibs that I didn't enjoy writing with. And to me, that's the perfect amount of ink that's there. So let's rate this pen. I'm going to give it a 9.2 2. It gets one check for being a tiger, which is primarily from the cap. And the nib gets a check. But other than that, I'm not overwhelmed with the pen. And probably when I'm finished with this ink fill, it will go into my Jinhao pen drawer for potential later utilization. So we've come to the end of this video, but there'll be something following the end if you want to hear my discussions on the Japanese pen market. So thank you all for watching. I hope this video finds you safe, healthy, and happy, enjoying your pens, finding a pen you can fall in love with that encourages you to put some ink down, write, doodle, sketch, draw. There's a lot of options. We've reached the end of this video, and we're going to say bye. Stay tuned if you want to hear more. So these are pens that I've assembled here to talk about design, marketing, sales, etc., etc. All of the different groups that participate in making a mass market item. So we're starting off here with the X159, the original Tiger Wood pen, the new version of the Tiger Wood pen. And here we have the Hongdian 100, which I haven't done a full review on yet, but it's in the works. Another Hongdian piston filler that I haven't done a review on yet, which has a nice long knife nib. Three other Hongdian piston fillers. And to me, if you look at these 4 Hongdian pens, you'll see a lot of variety, but a lot of consistency. All of these are piston fillers. This is the original one, a while ago, a year or so. I think these two are both phenomenally well done pens. And you can see this dark chrome here. Here's shiny gold. Here's very dark black. And here is more of a silver pen. And to me, the design, artistic function of the Jinhaos just don't compare to the Hongdians, number one. The build quality is similar, but I still think the Hongdians are a little bit better. And the Hongdians have really perfected their piston fill pens and are using them more and more. Where Jinhao, I don't think, has a piston fill pen. At least not one that I'm aware of. Wingsung does, Kaigalu does not, etc., etc. So share your thoughts about Chinese piston fillers and let me know if I've missed out on some. So I spent a number of years in a large retail sales environment where we designed and manufactured and sold millions and millions of pieces of various products. And in my work, I was probably involved in at least 100 new products that I was the product engineer for. So we would sit in meetings with design and marketing. Marketing represented sales because we had a direct sales line. And they would come up with ideas, and we needed new products every 2 weeks. That may tell some of you where I worked. So sometimes it was a real creative process where they would say, well, we need something that is initials, that has everyday use, and that turned into a skeleton key ring. And I was actively involved because a lot of the materials and design and manufacturing of that item were new to us. So I had to go out and find places to make it. And sometimes design would just come in with a piece from a competitor and they go, we need to do something like this. And then design would try to come up with something. And then we would work together as a team because we had to meet a price point. We had to make a certain number of volumes. So it was a very, very iterative process, and I enjoyed it. I eventually ended up designing a system to support product development. So that's how I see these going along here. So this is an anomaly to me, this Tiger pen, sold by Easy Buy, and only by Easy Buy, and only on Etsy. You know, this one was the original design, and they share a lot of components in common. And then the X159 is their newest pen from my viewpoint. But what's interesting is these take 1¼ turns to take off. This takes close to 3 turns. So why did that happen? My thought is that Jinhao doesn't have just one design, marketing, and engineering team. I think they have multiples. The other thing that I think happens in the Chinese pen market is a lot of these designs are developed by the many, many manufacturers that are in China. So they may have tooling, they may be doing a pen for another maker, and they'll come up with a version, and they may peddle that around to Jinhao, to Wingsung, Hongdian, Kaigalu, whoever. And that's how a lot of these pens may come into being. So it's not necessarily a design that was fully internally developed in-house, but one that was encouraged by manufacturing. And the other thing is when you treat and make a price point, and these pens I'm certain have extremely low profit margins, then you're very concerned about all the different components. Tooling is expensive in a lot of cases, even if you're dealing in a country like China. So therefore, I just am impressed that they're able to come out with this great variety of pens that I certainly enjoy owning, writing with, looking at, trying to figure out the different pieces and components and how well they work together. So that's my 2 cents on Chinese pen market and how these pens came into being. I'm certain I may be 100% wrong, but hey, it's a story I like, and I can support it with my own personal experiences.